Do you want to learn how to earn commissions of up to 20% by laundering millions of foreign dollars?
Well, we can't help you with that. But among the many IT problems we solve, Barracuda's email security solutions keep email phishing attacks like this from entering your business network and any valuable data from leaking out. Reclaim your network like 150,000 other businesses have. To learn more about stopping email-borne threats, visit barracuda.com/email.
Coming up on the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast, Booger McFarland drops the hammer on his former program, LSU. Everett Golson announces he's transferring out of Notre Dame. Will he land in the SEC? Plus, your phone calls. It's the Best of the Finebaum Show podcast, and it starts right now.
This is the Best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the program on this Thursday, and so much to do today, and a lot of news breaking as well. Certainly by now, you've heard the Lyle Collins story. He is heading to Dallas, so that is very good news for fans of him and his family, and certainly LSU fans as well, who have been hoping for the best in this very difficult situation in Baton Rouge. Another story breaking late today, not Braxton Miller, but Everett Golson, the on-again, off-again Notre Dame quarterback, has announced he is leaving. Where will he be going is one of the questions, and we'll get into that with a number of guests this afternoon. We'll also talk about the future of Les Miles at LSU. Booger McFarland about an hour away. Barrett Sallee from the Bleacher Report will give us his take on the SEC spring and where things go from here. Former Alabama defensive back and now Texan Kareem Jackson will join us, talking about Deflategate, playing for Saban, and what it's like in the NFL. But, John, the latest is Everett Golson, and it is all over the place. Where is he expected to land?
Two key elements to this story. Number one being that in January there was a report out of Baton Rouge that Everett Golson reached out to LSU and told them he would consider a transfer in May and wanted to see and get the temperature of Les Miles down there with the LSU football program. It's May, and that's happened. Golson's out at Notre Dame, so I think LSU, in terms of SEC intrigue, is number one on the list. Also, to keep in note, Paul, Barrett Sallee reported earlier that there's a bylaw in regards to graduate transfers, and that includes the fact that if you've been disciplined in regards to personal issues, academic issues, you'll need to file an appeal to bring a guy like Golson on your team. So those are the two key elements of this story.
And we'll get your reaction to that as well, 855-242-7285, and there's plenty out there. So Golson, the first to make the move. Still no word on Braxton Miller, what, if anything, he is going to do. He doesn't have to do anything. He can just stay where he is and be the third-team quarterback for Ohio State. So that's where we are, 855-242-7285. Marty Smith also later on. He's been all over the place covering college football for ESPN, but plenty of time for calls today as we spend time getting your reaction to a number of stories. Let's start. Hey, Lance.
I'm going to tell you something, Big Ten John. Everett Golson couldn't tie Will Greer's shoes. Everett Golson's overrated. Yeah, he's been in the program for a long time. He's got experience. That's all he's got is experience. He's one of them guys with potential. But everybody knows what potential means. He ain't done nothing yet.
Lance, he took Notre Dame to the national championship game.
What was the final score, Paul? Did they score?
It was a pretty good. It was I think it was 42-14.
Yeah, he got blown out. But if you're going to say he does, if you're going to say he doesn't have experience, that's flat out wrong.
I said he's got experience. That's all he's got. He's got experience. He ain't skilled. All he's got is potential. That means he ain't done nothing yet. Still waiting on him to do something. And Notre Dame, what did they beat that year? Florida State, I think that was a big win. Look at that brave, man. He's done manual. But let me ask you something, Paul. Tell me straight. Who do you think's the better offensive mind? Jim McElwain or Lane Kiffin as the offensive coordinator? Paul.
I'm thinking.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought I lost you, brother. I apologize.
Yeah. I'd probably go with Lane Kiffin.
I think Lane Kiffin a little bit sharper. But I was just wondering, man. I'm kind of feeling like Florida's kind of like not as talented as Alabama, don't get me wrong, but I just kind of feel like we're in the same boat this year. We just need defense to play well, and we need McFarland to get something out of the quarterback, and I think he can because look at Garrett Grayson. He was the third pick in the NFL draft. Nobody's seen that coming, so he obviously can do some stuff with some quarterbacks. That's the only reason I'm optimistic because he ain't got to fix
Well,
the
listen,
whole team.
I think Jim McElwain's a really good coach. I'm just not sure what he has to work with, and I know you're upbeat, but we'll find out, Lance. I mean, I can
Well,
wait. I don't know. I mean, it's always hard. It was hard to figure Florida out under Will Muschamp.
I'm not talking undefeated or nothing, Paul, but I think the SEC East can be won with 5 conference wins. We're not talking about going 10-2. I mean, come on. That's the only reason I see optimism. If you look at Georgia's schedule, they play Alabama and Auburn. That's 2 losses. Tennessee plays Arkansas and Alabama. That's at least 1. So I just think it's all going to even out, and it ain't going to be an undefeated team. That's why I think everybody's got a chance. That's the only reason I'm feeling optimistic. I ain't trying to run my mouth and say Florida's going to go undefeated or nothing. But I just believe in Coach Matt, man, because he's proven time and time the quarterback. Look what he did with Greg McElroy. Not bad, first-year starter. Good defense. He knows how to control the quarterbacks. And anytime your quarterback's connected to the head coach, that's a good thing for your program. Because in college, you don't as good as your quarterback. That's why we ain't been good since Tim Tebow left, Paul. We need a quarterback. We got one. Will Greer's the man. I'm telling you, Paul. I just want to get out front on the Will Greer party because during the season, everybody's going to come on board. I just want to be out front. That's all.
I hear you. Hey, thanks, Lance.
All right, man.
You know what would benefit Florida, Paul, if they sat Will Greer for the 2015
Oh,
season.
come on, John. Don't say that.
I thought we
Come on, John.
I thought
Will
you'd
Greer's
left,
the
Lance.
man. Come on, man.
And he is the man, and if you want him to stay healthy, you don't want him playing behind that offensive line that Florida has right now.
Jim McElwain ain't going to ask you to do 7-step drops. It's going to be quick screens. Give it to the running back. We got a tight end. Jake McGee. I know Joe Tess was high on him, but he got hurt last year. I think Jim Mack's a little bit smart. Go ahead.
What happens, you bring in Golson, you let Greer get a red shirt, and you keep him healthy. You let Everett Golson just take the beating, and you set up your program for future success. That's what you do.
Well,
I mean,
why not just let Treon Harris take the beating? Why would you bring in Everett Golson? That's all I'm saying. They're the same type of player. And I thought Treon Harris showed a lot more skill than what people are giving him credit for. I mean, he got suspended after the Tennessee game, and that really hurt us. I mean, that's on him, but at the same time, it really divided the locker room. When he got
listen,
suspended.
Lance, thanks again.
You're the best, Paul. I'm sorry, man. Thank you, man.
That's okay. Hey, good to hear from you. 855-242-7285. That is our number. Always good to hear from Lance, particularly when he's making sense, and he did make some sense today.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Selena, who had quite a Selena, the Money Mayweather of our show, with a knockout the other day, and in the fight of the century. How are you, Selena?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you?
Have you heard from your victim about a rematch?
Oh, only because people send me what he tweets about me. Apparently, I'm a winch. You know, like this time on a tow truck. Yeah, not winch as in woman, W-E-N-C-H, but winch with an I. So
I hear you.
if you flip through SUV, I guess I'm the one to call. But I wanted to talk today about LSU and Alabama and Florida and other SEC schools wanting other schools' discarded quarterbacks. There's no doubt that Everett Golson has the skills to be a good quarterback. And in the SEC, if he's protected properly by a good offensive line. But the fact remains is his last season wasn't really all that great. I mean, he ended up getting benched in the USC game. He didn't even start the Music City Bowl. And I think that I'm not real convinced that he could be the savior of a program that doesn't have a set quarterback at this time. As with Braxton Miller, I'm pretty close to the Ohio State program up here, and I know some people that are involved with it, and I don't think Braxton Miller is going anywhere. He's not going to be able to play a professional quarterback in the NFL. He's just probably too fragile, but he's still such a great athlete that if he doesn't win the quarterback competition, word around here is that he will switch to a tight end or wide receiver slot and be groomed for a potential NFL draft that way, in a system that he knows and trusts and with a coach that he knows and trusts, which I think is kind of a logical route for him to go. But in the end, I think that for every great SEC program, and all of our SEC programs are great, sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the greater long-term good. And it might be better for, say, Alabama or LSU to accept their 3 or 4 loss season and groom a young quarterback to take over the program than to look for an instant fix that's going to take game time snaps away from those quarterbacks. That's my opinion. What do you think?
Well, I think that is possible. Selena, thank you. Always good to catch up. We'll talk soon. Booger McFarland joins us, the former LSU and Tampa great, now, of course, with the SEC Network. And, Booger, I hope life is well. Good afternoon.
Paul, life is great, man. Just got to give me a workout, and I'm about to go fix me a tail shake. I was going to ask you, how do I make it?
I usually have the kale experts do it, but Booger, you don't want a kale shake. Just go for the good old reliable. You don't need to worry about that nonsense like me. Let's get right. Let's talk before we get to college football. Let me get your reaction to someone who knows all about playing in Super Bowls and knows how to live life at the highest level of the NFL. Just as a former player, what do you think about what happened yesterday with Deflategate, and what does it mean to Tom Brady?
Well, number one, I think based on the report, I think we can all realize that Tom Brady had something to do with it. Now, how much, I don't know. Did he pay somebody off? Did he blatantly lie? You can come to your own opinion. I know this. A lot of the former players I talk to, Paul, don't think it's a big deal. We all think that at some point in the game of football, we're going to push the envelope a little bit. Jerry Rice, Paul, admitted to using stickum on his gloves. I mean, I think, is he a cheater now? I mean, there have been several offensive linemen that use silicone on their jersey. Are they cheaters? I think that's left up to the individual person to figure out. Me personally, I think that the NFL is going to do something just because of the climate in the NFL today. But from a former player perspective, a guy that's won 2 Super Bowls, I don't think it's a big deal at all.
We'll move on to our favorite subject, and that is LSU football. We've spoken to a number of people. We've spoken to you a number of times, and as we get closer to the season, the angst and anxiety begins to intensify. Your thoughts on where is LSU this year, and where is this program going?
Well, LSU is a program that has to win, and I've said this numerous times. If you look at every position on LSU's roster, you can find guys that are able to play in the NFL, cornerback, linebacker with Beckers, defensive line, I think with Locketer and Gottschalk. You go to offensive line, running back, wide receiver, Malachi Dupree, Traven Durrell. There's only one position that's lacking on this team, and it's lacked for a couple of years, and that's quarterback. And I think because that position has lagged behind, because there's been a lack of development between Cam Cameron, who's making over $1 million as the offensive coordinator, because Les Miles is making over $4 million as the head coach, and your offense struggles to score points week in and week out, I think the entire staff is on their hot seat. And if they don't develop a quarterback this year with all the talent that they have, I think the seat goes from hot to boiling in Baton Rouge because Les Miles hasn't won anything in a while. 10 wins doesn't get it in LSU when you're competing against the ghost of Nick Saban who won national championships. So I think the seat is turned up. I think the heat is going to be hot. And if Harris or Jennings or maybe even Golson, who says he's going to transfer somewhere, maybe if he transfers to LSU, unless they can get a quarterback that can get the ball to these 5-star wide receivers, Les Miles and Cam Cameron are going to feel the heat.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between feeling the heat and boiling and being replaced. What is the line of demarcation for this program right now under Les Miles?
If Les Miles goes out and has a 7-win season this year, it wouldn't surprise me if they make a change. I'm just going to be honest with you. 7 wins is not good enough. To be frank, Paul, I don't think 8 wins is good enough. LSU is used to winning 9, 10, 11 games a year, and anything less than that is going to be a disappointment, especially coming off the disappointment last year when the quarterback struggled mightily. I think in any program, Paul, in any job, you look for progress. You know, when they hired me and you at ESPN, they knew that probably our worst day was going to be our first day. They wanted progress. And if you look at the last couple of years for LSU, there hasn't been much progress on the offensive side of the football. Yeah, I know Leonard Fournette is great, but that's a running back. What about the passing game? And I just don't see the progress in my alma mater. And as a former alumni, a guy that was an All-American there, it's alarming to me because I know the talent in the state and why we can't develop a quarterback. It's kind of puzzling to me.
The schedule is manageable But then again, that's without knowing what the quarterback situation is going to look like. But do you think the situation with him is one of feel? Because as we've all heard, the state's going through a financial crisis. Certainly getting rid of him would be expensive. I mean, you know all that. But as a former player and, as you said, a former All-American, I doubt you really care about anything other than this program being good.
Well, I look for the program to be good, just like I look for the entire conference to dominate. You know, there's a reason I enjoy working for the SEC network, but there's no overages about it. LSU's near and dear to my heart because I've led there, and it bothers me seeing a state that's going through an economic downturn when you have a coaching staff who's earning their money, but right now we're not developing the offensive side of the football, and I think a lot of people aren't looking at the wide receiver coach Adam Henry. He left. He went to the San Francisco 49ers. And when the components of your coaching staff start to leave, Chavis is leaving, Rick Haley left, you don't just start losing coach after coach after coach and not take a downturn. Les Miles cannot afford to lose any games this year, which you shouldn't lose. And theoretically, anything less than 10-2, I'm telling you, the people in Baton Rouge are going to really, really be calling for his head, Paul. And you know what? They should be, because of the amount of talent that's on that football team, just like at Alabama and Auburn. When you have as much talent as these programs have, their expectations when you coach them, and Gus Malzahn, Nick Saban, and Les Miles have programs where winning less than 10 games just isn't accepted for multiple years in a row.
Booger, on that same subject, and certainly you've seen the schedule like everyone, on the road against Mississippi State. That's a game that really sent the season off to on the wrong foot last year. Follow that up with a home game against Auburn, a road game at Syracuse, then at South Carolina, Florida at home, at Alabama, Arkansas at home, at Ole Miss, and A&M at home. I've just given you the schedule that you already know, but what's realistic?
Realistic, I think, Paul, if the quarterback plays decent, which it's the biggest wild card, I know how Jennings or Harris or Golson or whoever's going to play quarterback is going to play. I think realistic, it's going to be tough going to Alabama and getting a win. I say that, but we don't know what kind of quarterback Alabama's going to have. I think anything less than 10-2 is going to be a disappointment. Realistically, I think if you ask Les Miles right now, he thinks he can win every ball game. Why? Because the SEC is down in the quarterback position. Alabama, who's considered the best team, breaking in a new quarterback. Auburn, breaking in a new quarterback. Mississippi State, they lose just about everything in their front seven. No Josh Robinson. So, to be honest, Paul, the ceiling can be SEC champions if the quarterback play is good. Now, here's the flip side. If the quarterback play is bad, then you could be looking at a 7-5 year, which I think Les Miles will really, really be looking at the door if they go 7-5.
Give you credit, Booger. Not many people in your position would speak the truth, which I know you believe. But thanks so much. Always great to catch up.
Oh, good. Thanks, P. Diddy.
You got it. Booger McFarland laying down some pretty serious smack on Les Miles. This is a guy that played there, All-American there, now works for the SEC Network. Obviously not afraid of what anyone thinks of his comments. Saying anything less than 10-2, people will be calling for Les Miles' head. That's what Booger McFarland just told us, and he didn't back down one bit. He's fed up with the program. He's fed up with the development of quarterbacks with Cam Cameron and Les Miles, and he is signaling regime change if things do not improve in a very, very big way.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
John is up next in Auburn. How are you, John?
Doing well. How are y'all doing?
Very well, thank you.
It's funny that y'all brought up Cam Newton, because today, actually, I bought the newest Madden, and I put it in, and the beginning sequence is narrated by Cam Newton. It's you playing against the Seahawks as Cam Newton on a game-winning drive. So
how cool.
That was really interesting. Yeah, and really, he had some problems in college, like with the public, and I thought his entrance to the NFL might be tainted a little, but he ended up winning all the rookie awards and made a name for himself at the very beginning. But, you know, I didn't really think people in the NFL were going to take him that seriously, and he's kind of made a name for himself. But honestly, my one question is, when is he going to win a Super Bowl?
Well, before he wins the Super Bowl, he needs to win a playoff game, which he has not done yet. Actually, I take it back. He won one this year, but he lost against Seattle. Last year, they had a bye in the first round. That's where I got confused. But yeah, he's up. He's up for a big contract. I think he's going to get it based on everything I see and hear. And I think it's fairly early in his career to start asking the Super Bowl question. That's something you more likely get on the back end. He's still in the very I wouldn't call it the early stage, but certainly the front end of his career. But I think Cam Newton has answered a lot of critics. When Cam Newton is healthy, he is very good. He just simply has not been healthy very much.
Right. And do you think he'll be sticking with North Carolina for a while, or do you see him transferring?
Yeah, I think they are going to make a pretty strong effort to re-sign him based on everything I hear around that community. Hey, thanks for the call. Gene is in North Carolina, and up next. How are you, Gene?
I'm doing just fine, Paul. How you doing?
Really well, thank you.
For a first-time caller, hey, I'm a big Dog fan. What do you think about their quarterback situation?
Well, that's another one of those questions we get a lot, John. You've dug pretty deep into what's it look like for the Dogs. We had Mark Richt on a few weeks ago. He wasn't giving much away, but I think it's pretty obvious they are not in superb shape.
No, they're not. They're not at all. There's a 2-quarterback race. I believe the kid's name is Finebaum is someone that a lot of Georgia fans are looking towards.
Glad you said it.
But there's no established quarterback on the roster. That's the problem.
The bad thing about Georgia is, that's a bipolar team. I love the Dogs. I've been a Dog fan ever since I was 10, 11, 12 years old, going to Athens with my dad watching games, but they're just bipolar. And there's one thing that I am missing on this Paul Finebaum show that I hadn't heard in a while. Where is Tammy?
Teddy quit yesterday.
No, Tammy.
Oh, Tammy. She didn't quit. We just haven't heard from her in a while. I'm sorry. I got Tammy and Teddy confused. She will be back, I can assure you. A lot of people take a break in basketball season and spring. The football season isn't quite here yet, but it's not far away. So you'll start to hear the reemergence of some of the so-called regulars. Shelton is in Tennessee. What's up?
Hey, Paul. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you very much.
I did have a quick question about Butch Jones and the recruiting happening at UT. Just because, and unfortunately I hate to say this for the guy that just called, but the depth happening at UT is apparent. Quentin Dormady, I'm not sure if you watched the spring game or not, but his first time in front of 60,000 plus people in Knoxville, it was pretty impressive. So I want to get your perspective on how you see Tennessee faring in the SEC just in the next few years.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the call. Listen, it's always hard to answer the Tennessee question without equivocating. As high as I am on Tennessee, and I am as high as anyone else, I'm struggling to see how they're going to have a SEC title run appearance this year. I think they'll come close. They have to turn a couple of games. John, we've heard 8-4 as kind of the mid number, but they can do better than that. They'll have to do better than that to get to Atlanta. But they have so many of what you would call swing games, and but teams can get on a roll. And I think they have a decent schedule. Oklahoma at home, we've beat that one to death. Can they win that? Yeah. Will they? Probably won't be the favorite. Then the must-win game, I think, is in Gainesville, and then they have Georgia at home. And if they can turn all three of those, then they're off and running. Of course, they also have Arkansas. They don't have a great schedule, I don't think.
Let's put it into perspective in regards to who are going to be the players in the East over the next 3 years. let's call it a 4-year cycle. Butch Jones has those 2 top 5 recruiting classes the last couple of years. Those kids are going to be in school for the next 3 or 4 years. Georgia's going to be a player. They've consistently been there. You know what you're going to get from Richt. Mizzou, I don't have any reason to believe why Gary Pinkel is going to take a step backwards. They're always going to be a tough out, especially when you have to go to Columbia, and then Tennessee's the 3rd team. Those 3 teams, I don't see Vanderbilt, Kentucky, South Carolina, or Florida being a player anytime within the next 3 years. So where do you rank those 3 programs, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I still think, with all due respect to my friends in Missouri, I still think Georgia is the team to beat in the SEC East. And after that, it really comes down to probably Missouri and Tennessee. And I think this year Missouri with a slight edge there because Tennessee has to play at Missouri, and I think that is a factor. Tennessee has been good. I mean, they won that game at South Carolina last year, but last year everyone was beating South Carolina, and Tennessee just needs some signature wins, and right now they don't have that. They have 2 big wins over South Carolina, one at Neyland, which was a major upset, and then one on the road, which really wasn't all that big a deal. They have 2 near wins over Georgia. They have to beat Georgia.
They have to, and they need to beat Florida as well.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I'll say it for the 1,000th time. Florida, to me, if they can't beat Florida, then they're not worth talking about.
And this isn't a knock against Butch Jones. I think he's a quality football coach. But what we know is Butch Jones is a recruiter. We know Butch Jones is a salesman. We know Butch Jones, the great marketer. What he's done for that Tennessee program, hashtag brick by brick, Tennessee's presence on social media, Butch Jones just winning over that fan base, bringing former players, alumni back to Knoxville to celebrate the tradition that is Tennessee football. Peyton Manning with an appearance at the spring game. He's got the program in the right spot. Now all I need to see as someone who watches college footballs on Saturday is Tennessee in the win column against Oklahoma, in the win column against Arkansas, in the win column against Florida.
And Georgia. And Darryl is in Georgia right now. And next up.
I think that's what we've been waiting on. I mean, we know what all this Jones has done. He's done everything but win consistently, right? Which
Well,
is
still pretty early in his career there.
Well, how long has he been there, Paul?
This is his 3rd year.
Okay, 3 years. I mean, that's, they in the SEC. If you ain't done anything in 3 years at a major one of the major schools, and you're close to being out the door.
Well, I mean, you better show improvement.
I mean, Matt, you start winning some games that maybe you're not supposed to win, and win some. There's nothing I would love to see more than Tennessee beat Oklahoma. That right there would be the start of the start. In my opinion, that's when I know that Tennessee is on the right track. I hear all this. Peyton Manning showed up, and they did all this. He bought all this. That's good. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, you've got to put W's in. You got to put wins in the W column. That right there is what matters most. That's what people look at. Hey, I was going to mention to you yesterday. I don't know if you heard or not. Probably not. But I think the next big time quarterback to play in the SEC, boy by the name of Easton for Georgia, threw the ball 63 yards. He beat out the USC, the Southern Cal recruit, for the longest ball. They had a competition who threw the ball the farthest. You remember Steve Barkowski?
Sure.
They said, I don't know now, but they said that he could throw football from end zone to end zone in the air. I've heard that from many, many sources, and I remember him back in the day with the Falcons. Hey, did you realize that between Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, and Auburn, they have been through 10 head coaches since Mark Richt took over Georgia?
I didn't realize that.
That's a lot. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let me ask you this, Paul. Jimmy, who's your top 4 defenses going into this season in the SEC? What would be your top 4?
I'm pretty sold on Alabama. What about you?
Well, Alabama's always got a pretty good defense, yeah. I mean, I saw that when it still came out with that poll, South Carolina wasn't ranked in the top 25, were they?
What did he say? I haven't seen his poll.
Oh, well, you had Auburn number 4, had Alabama number 7, Georgia had, that's the poll that had 9 SEC schools in the top 25. Tennessee's like 23. But if I recall correctly, the whole ball coach wasn't ranked. I mean, you know what?
Well, I mean, listen, Yeah, I mean, let's cut to the chase. I mean, what happened last year was last year, but no one's talking about them. And you'll hear Spurrier say that's a good thing. It's not a good thing. His program went from a top 10 team a year ago in the public's eye to not even a factor right now, and that's a problem for that program.
Well, that's a problem for that program. But it's because of where he's gotten the program. But still, I mean, you get that far, fans come to expect it. But hey, Paul, is there something that you want to say real quick? Because I wish you would say something so I can interrupt you and say, hey, Paul, I'm sorry, but we got to go to break. See ya.
Good stuff. And we do. We absolutely do. Take a break. More of your calls. 855-242-7285. Just kind of a laid-back Thursday here in early May.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
I'm Ann in Montgomery.
Good afternoon, Paul. I know you're doing well because you're doing what you do every day, 5 days a week.
That is correct.
You brought up a great topic yesterday. And I guess it was towards the end of the show. Jim, the early years. And, I've been thinking about that. Because as I was a little fella, back in the 60s, I was a little guy. I remember seeing pictures of Y.E. Tittle bleeding. You remember that picture?
Oh, that's one of the iconic pictures of all time.
Absolutely. And
But I don't remember any of that, since I wasn't born I was born in 1987.
That's right. You're just a young pup. So I'll take you back. Put on some of that violin music. But, I remember back in the day, there wasn't specialized athletes. These guys played, there wasn't situational players. Oh, they're going to run, we better swap the line. They're going to pass, we better move everybody. These guys played. And they really weren't great athletes. They were good, but this is what they did. They played football, and they gave all for the game. Baseball, basketball. They gave everything they had physically, mentally for the game. And this guy called and said Jim hurt his hand. And then Jim meets Marciano down in Miami Beach, when he was working down there. Can you imagine what Marciano thought when Jim said, I'd have been great, but I hurt my hand? I mean, this was when everybody played hurt. Jim got hurt one time, and he bailed. He quit, Paul, and he's been talking about it for what, 50 years? And he quit. And
what are you talking about, you fool?
I'm talking about you. I'm talking about Jim. I'm talking about Jim Minnesota Fats, Jim Minnesota Tarzan, Jim Minnesota Jenner. I'm talking about Jim Minnesota Koufax, Jim Minnesota Abdul-Jabbar. I'm talking about Jim Minnesota Ali. I'm talking about Jim Minnesota Drysdale, Mantle. I mean, we could go on, and he quit when everybody else gave all. More than Eagle, Paul.
Jason is up next in Ohio. Hello, Jason. Thank you for the phone call. Good afternoon.
How are you today?
I'm well, thanks.
I got 2 questions for you. How long do you think Urban Meyer is going to be at Ohio State? And do you think this will be his last job?
Boy, that's a tough question, Jason. I will say I do think it will be his last job because I don't think if he at some point he decides he's had enough there, I cannot imagine Urban Meyer coaching anywhere else. I think this is a great position for him. I think he'll be there a while. I know that there are doubters, but I'm not one of them. I think Urban Meyer is in the right position, and people bring up his health, but he's already dealt with that.
What about the NFL? What about if Charlie Strong gets let go at Texas?
Notre Dame.
I don't see him going to Notre Dame. You never know about the NFL, but I just can't see him leaving to go to another college.
The Cleveland Browns came calling. You don't think they offered him the money that he would go?
Let me ask you this: why does he need money? He's making $6, $7, $8 million a year. How much more can you make?
Well, it's part of the money is that the money's always important, but also just not a lot of successful coaches going from college football to the NFL, and there's a few, I give you that, but it certainly would cement his resume if he were to go to the NFL and take a team to the Super Bowl and win it.
Listen, I'm not going to argue with you. You make a good point, but I mean, what is there about the NFL that you think he would find attractive that he doesn't find now?
Enough the challenge more than anything.
Okay.
So now again, I'm an Ohio State fan. I don't want him to leave, and that's where I just the pinnacle of college football is where he's at now, and I think he's a competitive man, and if there's a challenge out there, I think he would definitely entertain it.
Well, that part of the conversation I agree with you on. I don't know. I mean, I know him. I don't know him well enough to really be inside his head. I mean, what you have to wonder, though, is this. Let's say he wins again this year. That's 2 straight. He had a shot at probably 3, and then the pressure. Then he's he's already there, but I mean, he's into the Saban zone where nothing is good enough, and then that's when coaches sometimes say, you know what, I can't do this anymore. There's way too much pressure. The NFL, you're never going to win that much because it's too difficult.
Absolutely.
I mean, listen. I started the conversation not really buying much of what you were saying, but I'm coming around to at least understanding your point.
Well, hopefully that doesn't come to fruition, but it's something that could possibly rear its head at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that possibility, and I think Urban. I think if Urban wins it again this year, just for the sake of conversation, you're going to have people going and saying "woo." I mean, in the two years that not the 2 years, but one of the years Saban won, the other year Jimbo Fisher won. One year Ohio State was on probation, but you talk about a run that could have been epic, and that will be a conversation. And some of that's Ohio State's fault because they made a bad decision on playing that bowl game instead of going ahead and biting the bullet then.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Rich is up next. Hey, Rich.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
I
agree with you. He's right, too, because if you remember the last drive, there was no sense of urgency. They took about 9 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And they were down 2 scores.
Yeah, it was a very poorly operated drive. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it was like playing the cover or something. I don't know. I'm glad, though.
They did, though.
Hey, speaking of covering, is there any truth to the rumor that Cam Newton's not walking this weekend because Danny Sheridan and Bagman are going to be there to give out the degree?
I thought Danny was giving the commencement at Auburn.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Hey, if the NCAA was in control of the NFL, would they hit him for lack of institutional control, the Patriots, and ban him from the postseason? What do you think?
Boy, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And
all right, my comedy routine's not working. All right.
No, it is. I apologize. We just don't have the usual laugh track kicking in.
No, that's Larry. Larry's coming up next. Hey, SEC East. I think it's going to be fun this year. In your opinion, of the perceived middle of the pack, which to me would be Florida, South Carolina, and Kentucky, which one do you think surprises?
That is the most difficult question, Rich, that's been asked all day. John, which one would you go with if you had to bet Kentucky, Florida, or South Carolina?
If what? I'm sorry.
And from the middle of the pack. I mean, which would be the biggest surprise positively from those 3 teams?
Honestly, I think if I take one of those 3 to have the best year, it's Kentucky. I guess because of the quarterback. I don't know.
That's Jim Bunning's grandson, John.
Yep, exactly right. I mean, they have a guy there. They made some decent strides last season. They stumbled down the stretch mightily, to say the least. But I've had conversations where I don't buy into McElwain at Florida. It's not going to go well year one. Who knows what South Carolina is going to do? They've got Pharaoh Cooper. Other than Pharaoh Cooper, what does South Carolina have?
I mean, I know what you're saying. Do you think we are bailed on South Carolina too much?
No.
So
that's where I'm going, Paul, because the one coordinator switch that no one talked about was Hope.
Yeah.
And who really believes that Steve Spurrier is going to go 1-7 in the conference? I really Vanderbilt.
I don't. I'm with you. I'm not expecting greatness, but I do think he is good enough to cobble together a respectable season.
A decent season.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just find that whole I think that it's fascinating because the talent level amongst those 6 teams is not that. There's not that huge gap, you know. I mean, look at Missouri. They, ad nauseum, they overachieve. You know, Tennessee, they probably have the most talent along with UGA. But Florida still has players too. I mean, I just think it's going to be interesting to see which one of those middle-of-the-pack teams upsets the perceived upper 3, if you will. That's my question for today.
I tell you what, Rich, I am going to bet with you. I think South Carolina is good enough to win some games, and yeah, I mean they have a couple of. I mean they have a little bit of bad luck on the schedule, but I think Georgia to me would look like a loss. Missouri looks like a loss, but LSU at home is a swing game. Clearly, at A&M I think that's rough. I see 7 or 8 wins on that schedule.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Hey, real quick, Paul.
No more than that.
I think Selena had a great call today, and I had said I think she had more salient points about college football in one call than Jim has in 5 years. Thanks for taking my call, buddy. See ya.
Thank you very much. Let's continue with more calls, and John is next up in Nebraska. Hey, John.
Hey, how we doing, Paul?
Okay, thank you.
Good. Hey, just quick. I've been listening, first-time caller. Just guess I needed to chime in. What do you think about it? I think the Big Ten has taken over the best conference in the nation. With Mike Riley coming to Nebraska and Harbaugh and Urban Meyer, I think the SEC's time has come and gone. Now you've got Big Ten, Pac-12 are definitely the 2 best conferences. I'll hang up and just let you listen. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead. It's kind of a hit-and-run drive-by there. Listen, I always hate to give the preamble. I've known Mike Riley and think he's a very good coach, but I still can't get over the fact that Nebraska hired him. It was a strange hire, and just because you hire Mike Riley and Jim Harbaugh doesn't mean you've taken over and surpassed anything. It does mean that you have some quality coaches. I think both are upgrades of what they had in Bo Pelini and Brady Hoke, but I think you're talking about iconic programs there who are still middle of the pack in the Big Ten.
Are you kidding me? I mean, some guy just called in to say the Big Ten's going to take over as the best conference in college football and uses the reason of Mike Riley to Nebraska to back up that point. I mean, that's as underwhelming as a hire.
What did Mike Riley
as there's
really
been.
do at Oregon State?
I don't know. I've seen a couple players come out of Oregon State, although I don't know how many wins came out of Oregon State.
Not many.
And the Big Ten West is not where the action is. It's the Big Ten East, Michigan State, Michigan, and Penn State. Ohio State in that division as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And, I mean, I think, obviously, the heat is on Jim Harbaugh. I don't think anybody even knows Mike Riley has arrived yet in Lincoln.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
go to the plate, safe at the plate,
right through the World Series.
For the 3rd time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio. This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jerome is next in Birmingham. Hey, Jerome.
What's going on, Paul?
Doing great.
Hey, listen, man. With down south football, we don't even want to hear nothing from Pac-12 and the Big Ten, Paul. They rather mute them clowns next time they call down here and tell you anything about the Pac-12 and Big Ten. Better football in the South. Now, listen, let's get to more pressing matter, Paul, as far as the state of Mississippi. You know and I know, Paul,
Nothing is going to come out of Mississippi, Paul. No kind of championship, Finebaum. Why don't you tell them people to stop calling in, wishing and begging and praying? We don't care about what happened last year, Paul Finebaum. They're going to need more than Prescott and some 2-stars when they come to Tuscaloosa. Or when we go down there, Finebaum, it simply don't matter. You hear me? Outside of doggone Ohio State, Finebaum, Alabama's not worried about the rest of these clowns. You hear me? Arkansas, y'all can boost them up all y'all want to. Them clowns, you know they're going to finish behind the tide, just like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and the rest of the nation, Finebaum. This battle is between Ohio State and Alabama.
Jerome.
Yeah,
this is like you've been singing from this side of the congregation for 2 straight years, and guess what, Jerome? You've been wrong the last 2 years. You may very well be wrong again this year. Are you just gonna say this until your last day on earth?
I sure am, Finebaum. Every day you have a guest on here, they say the same thing, whether we're going to be good or bad. Finebaum, guess what? You cannot even have a show unless you get on here and say something negative or positive about Alabama. So guess what? You say the same thing every day, all day. So guess what? One of us going to be right one day, and I guess I'm going to be right. Roll Tide and have a good day.
Okay, thank you for the call.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Marty Smith has been with us many, many times. Reporter and writer for ESPN, has covered NASCAR and obviously college football, was all over the playoffs, has been all over everywhere in these last few years. Marty, thanks for the time, and tell me about visiting and spending time with NASCAR guys talking college football.
It is a monstrous passion in the garage, far, far more so than any other sport. You know, that's one thing that I loved about the opportunity to transition that way. One reason that I love NASCAR is because the fans are so ardent, and they hate your guy as much as they love their own. And that's one thing that I love about college. Like, I want my sports to instill and elicit passion, and nothing does that like college football. And that's certainly the case in our garage. I mean, every Saturday, most Saturdays, it is not unorthodox at all to see several people wearing their colors all day long, and that includes drivers. And
who are among the biggest fans?
Driver-wise?
Yes.
I will say this. Elliott Sadler is a huge, huge college football fan. Denny Hamlin is a huge college football fan. Clint Boyer. Let me think about who else. Dale Earnhardt Jr. loves him some Steve Spurrier. So several of those guys are really involved. And there's a kid that drives the number 17 car named Ricky Stenhouse. Ricky's very close with Hugh Freeze, who actually was at Talladega last weekend to drive the pace car.
Right.
And I had a really nice interview with him about his love of NASCAR and how he grew. I mean, he grew up in the South, and he said there are certain things that, as a Southern kid growing up, that just become ingrained in you, and that is one of them. And I found it pretty cool that a lot of his offensive sets, he uses NASCAR terminology, and the fastest set that they have in Oxford is called Talladega. So there you go.
Is it really?
A little tidbit of information.
How was Hugh Freeze received just down the road from the University of Alabama?
I did not hear it. I was busy doing another interview when he was introduced. He did say though, he expected to hear some boos, but the one thing about the SEC is the mutual respect among all. And I will say, man, that is one interesting thing about the SEC that I find fascinating. It's this, we loathe one another on Saturday afternoons. It's almost like siblings, right? Because you can do whatever you want to do to your brother. I can whip my brother's tail. I can call my brother whatever I want to call my brother, but you can't. If you step in and call my brother something or try to whip my brother's tail, I'm coming after you. I have his back. And that's the way fans of that conference operate. It's really interesting psychology to me. And, you know, when Cowherd went off the other day on his tangent about how the Pac-12 is a better conference than the SEC and has more talent and all those things, I can't imagine some of the calls that didn't get on air on your show.
Marty Smith, finally, let me go back to something you mentioned early on. You're heading back to your alma mater this weekend to give the commencement. I cannot imagine what emotions. It hasn't been that long since you graduated, but talk a little bit about the process, putting this together, trying to relate to what 22, 23-year-olds are thinking as you're standing up there in front of them Saturday.
Yes, sir. I'm taking it extremely seriously, and it is just such an honor that I want to keep it pretty short. I was them not too long ago. There's some guy out there, I don't even remember who spoke at my graduation. I have no idea. Obviously, they didn't tell me a whole lot that mattered to me. But at that same time, all I wanted to do was go drink beers with my buddies. I wanted to drink goodbye to friends. And there's a lot of things in that moment that I should have done that I didn't do, that I was too selfish to do. My mama was real sick at that time, and she couldn't be at my graduation. I should have taken my graduation to her. I was a little too selfish to do that. There are so many people that helped get you to that point. So if your mom and your dad or uncle, aunt, grandpa, grandmother, whomever that is that championed you to have this opportunity to walk across this stage, you need to look them in those tear-stained eyes tonight and thank them for that opportunity. And there's also this weird thing where our society wants to compare the what's the right word? The prestige of the degree. To me, a degree is an opportunity. I don't care if it says Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, Radford, Virginia Tech, Harvard, Duke, don't care. It's an opportunity. It's that crack in the door that I talked about earlier. Somebody gives you that opportunity, you kick the door in. And then you bust your tail and you be kind to people and you outwork the next guy and you have passion, and there'll be another opportunity and another crack in the door. So that's kind of the genre of message, the fundamental things that I want to tell them. And, some people, my wife really wants me to be funny and tell all these funny stories and things, and I will, I'll be funny, but it's going to be pretty intense. It's pretty intense.
Well, good luck. I can only imagine what it's like speaking at your alma mater. You'll kill it like you do all the time. Marty, this has been a great pleasure, and I hope you'll come back soon.
Likewise, sir. Y'all are first class. I appreciate your show so much. Have a great evening.
The great Marty Smith.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Bill, you there?
Hello.
Hey, Bill. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you, sir?
I am doing great.
I know everybody asked you that, and nobody really care, but
you're right.
I know you get tired of hearing it.
Well, okay.
No, you had a guest on a while ago, and I listened to him, and he is I can tell he is he knows what he's talking about.
Yes, sir.
But there's one thing. Anytime that people call NASCAR racers athletes is an insult to athletes.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this.
It is a insult.
Let me ask you,
no
Bill, hold on.
athleticism and
Bill.
sitting in a car.
No, Bill.
Trying to kill yourself.
Hold on a second.
Doing
Bill, hold on 1 second.
turns.
Have you ever been in a NASCAR?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I have too.
I don't have any respect for them.
Well, let me say this. Just give me 1 second, then you can talk. I did a run around Talladega once with a NASCAR champion, and we went, I think the peak time was 190. And I can assure you, if you're not an athlete, and if you don't have hand-eye coordination, and if you aren't on top of your game, you will die. It is that simple.
I understand that, but let me tell you something, Paul. I doubt very seriously that you've ever been an athlete, and I have been.
Okay.
And, buddy, you pay the price to be an athlete.
Well,
and that's not sitting down in a car doing a left-hand turn.
No, well, there's nothing. Well, first of all, Bill, with all due respect, I don't know what kind of athlete you were, and I've never.
I was a little bit of everything.
Well, good.
I played it all.
I'm really proud.
But now,
of you.
I was not.
The bottom line is this: you spend 4 hours in a car in 120-degree temperature and
I
tell me you're not
did that at work. I did that where I worked at.
Where did you work?
Well, I worked for a power company.
And what did you do?
I was a mechanic.
Okay. Well, then, I mean, that's good.
You know, and I had to get up next to the boiler. And it was 130 and 140 degrees, and I had to fix it. If it took all day, I had to stay there.
Okay. I respect that.
Well, I don't really think you do if you ain't never been through it.
Well, no, I've never been. I'll be honest with you. I've been in a NASCAR, but I've never been a mechanic.
Well, I have. For somebody to say that these race car drivers are athletes
I'm telling
is
you
an
they are.
insult.
Well,
and anybody that's ever had a pretty rough job and knows what a athlete is knows it. Okay. And I don't know why somebody else don't call you and tell you that, because it's an insult. They are not athletes. And I don't know why, and I don't know where it come from. Years ago, they didn't call them athletes, but somebody come up with a bright idea, hey, we'll call them athletes. Now, if you don't believe what I'm saying, look at history and find out where they said athletes and see when that started.
Why are you so aggravated about this?
Well, I just keep hearing it over and over again, not just from you, but from other.
I don't think I've ever said it.
Well, it was said on your show a while ago, and I've heard it before from other people about these athletes, and they are not, in my opinion now, they are not athletes.
Well, I'll tell you what.
But now I think they're crazy, or they got a death wish, because anybody that got now they got some guts.
Hey, let me tell you
more
this, Bill.
guts than any athlete I know of.
I would be willing to bet you that a 50-year-old former NASCAR driver walks down the street a lot easier than a 50-year-old former NFL player.
Well, sure, he sat down all his life. He ain't never done no job. that 50-year-old pro football player. Evidently, you ain't never been to a college practice and see what they go through.
No, I've never been to one.
Well, evidently you hadn't.
I don't cover college sports.
Or you've never done it.
I've never done anything. I just sit here. I sit here and make left turns every day, and I'm making one now by saying thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Barrett Salee joins us now. Certainly much going on today, including Everett Golson's announcement that he will leave Notre Dame. Where will he end up? Barrett joining us from the Bleacher Report. Good afternoon, Barrett. Certainly Everett Golson has been one of the topics of the day. Give us your impressions of his decision, and what are the likelihood of him coming south?
I think everyone sort of expected that to happen once he graduates, and he'll graduate. Well, I guess he's finishing up this week, or just finished up last week, and will graduate in mid-May. So it's not the most surprising thing in the world. As far as coming to the SEC, and I wrote about this in January. Apparently, people are just now catching on. The new rule, graduate transfer rule, that was enacted last May, it has a stipulation in there stating that if you are subject to either academic or athletic department discipline at any institution, then you can't transfer. And, say what you will, define his expulsion, suspension, dismissal, however you want to describe it from Notre Dame in 2013. I'd say it was an official punishment. So there is a waiver process. It's a new rule. We've only really seen this applied a couple of times, and not really in football, especially to a high-profile player. So if there is a destination, they're going to have to jump through some hoops to get him there. I think that obviously LSU should be interested. I would imagine South Carolina is interested, especially considering he's from Myrtle Beach. I would imagine Florida's interested. So I don't know. We'll see. It's certainly interesting, especially with the curveball of the new rule being in place.
Barrett, I realize you laid out a couple there. Are there? I mean, there's certainly speculation, but is there anything more than that right now? Is it all a guess?
Well, I mean, I think that coaches have expected this. I would imagine a lot of coaches, and I know a few that have begun the reach out process a long time ago for any graduate transfers, just to gauge their interest, to say, hey, look, if you're interested, we're interested. Or if you're making a move, don't forget to call us type thing. So I'm sure that's been going on for a long time. And now that officially he's leaving, I would imagine it sort of just reopens those doors and sort of starts the flood of coaches and, people coming into them to say, hey, look, this school may be interested or that school may be interested. So I would imagine it's not something that's a surprise. No staff is going to be surprised by this. Any transfer destination that Everett Golson is thinking of going to, I'm sure there's been some sort of either second or third party contact to let, everybody know, where he stands and where the school stands. So I would imagine now that it's official and that he is leaving, it's going to go pretty quickly.
Barrett Sallee with us from the Bleacher Report. Barrett, spring is over. It finally ended 2 weeks ago, at least for the SEC schools, and impressions are all over the map. But you do this day in, day out, all day long. What impressions have stuck to you, and has anything changed since spring began?
Not a whole lot's changed. I think I know Alabama fans had some, were impressed with the wide receivers, and by virtue of that may be an insult and a detriment to the cornerbacks. But I thought Alabama's defensive backs played all right in that A-Day game, and they didn't get burned. They were on the same page. They just got beat a couple times, and that's okay. So I think that goes a long way for Alabama, because just being on the same page in the defensive backfield is a massive step forward from where they were. I think Auburn's really happy, obviously, with where they are. I talked to Gus Malzahn last night he was in Atlanta, so I got 10 minutes of media time with him, and he's really happy with where the defense is, with where Will Muschamp is, and specifically with how Carl Lawson has not only handled the transition to Will Muschamp's defense, but also, being held back and not tackling to the ground. He's, handled that very well. And so I think Auburn's, of all the teams, I think Auburn's probably the happiest of where they are. Tennessee, even though, spring they didn't have a ton of players and a lot of players were out, I think Tennessee has to be thrilled with the depth that built and where they stand in the SEC East. And I think Georgia, with the quarterback position, I saw Georgia mentioned as a possible Everett Golson destination today. That makes me scratch my head, because I think that Mark Richt is very happy with where Bryce Ramsey is. I think he was happy with the way Fatone bought a closed spring practice, and the way Jacob Park's been competing as a sort of the underdog in that three-man battle.
Barrett Sallee with us. Barrett, we've talked about some of the upbeat stories. Any place or any places where deep down they're more than a little worried?
Yeah, Florida. I mean, that offensive line is going to be a problem. 6 healthy offensive linemen exiting spring practice. They'll have 12 healthy scholarship offensive linemen, during the fall. Now, one of them is Marquez Ivy, and he can play, but he can't play all 5 positions. So, the quarterbacks, whoever it is, whether it's Treon Harris or Will Greer, that's going to be a problem with that offensive line. I think because of the injuries, maybe Jim McElwain and the staff, sort of takes a step back and say, hey, look, all right, here are 3 or 4 things that the offensive line can do really well. Focus on that. Blend whatever kind of systems we need to blend to make it work, and let's just get through this. I think that's going to lead to some inconsistency for Florida this year. LSU, I know the quarterbacks put up some nice statistics, but they basically did it against a second-team defense that looked completely lost in that spring game. The first-team defense actually held the quarterbacks in check. So if you're LSU, the stats are nice and shiny from your quarterbacks, but I'm not so sure they've made the step forward that a lot of people seem to think they have. So I think that's the one thing that LSU, again, sort of like a broken record. We've been talking about LSU quarterback issues basically every offseason since Matt Flynn left. But here we are again.
Earlier today, Booger McFarland joined us, the former LSU All-American, now SEC Network analyst, and he said anything less than 10-2, and people are going to start calling for Les Miles' head. First of all, in your estimation, what are the chances of LSU making it to 10-2?
Oh, I don't think they'll go 10-2. I think that's very, very optimistic to a point where it's maybe a little bit absurd. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a big year for Les. He's not going to get fired unless there's some sort of 3-9 debacle. But 8-5 makes next year probably pretty interesting for him. But if they go 9-3, I mean, they've still got a relatively tough schedule. They do get Auburn at home, which is helpful, and they draw South Carolina and Florida out of the East, which isn't the most daunting cross-division schedule in the world. But they have Ole Miss and Alabama both on the road. I mean, if they go 9-3, I think that's pretty significant progress, because for them to go 9-3, that offense is going to have to do something. And that's the one thing that's been sorely missing in Baton Rouge. So, I don't think he's going to get fired, barring a 3-9 type disaster. But if they go 7-5, then 2016 is going to get a little sketchy.
You have pretty well owned the Steve Spurrier is not going to compete for another SEC title. That window has closed. Anything changed on that front?
No, not really. I mean, if for whatever reason somehow they do get Everett Golson, then maybe I could see that this year being the last year. Maybe that door, window gets unlocked a little bit. But again, I think it's going to be hard for Golson to transfer to the SEC anywhere. But the East right now is so interesting, because I think this is the last year of it really being down. I think in 2016 we'll talk about the SEC East potentially has not the power, but a power alongside the West, because Tennessee is going to be even more loaded. Florida, I think, will have a lot of their issues at least solved, or at least on the way to being solved. Georgia's still got plenty of talent. So the window is, it's closed, it's not locked. I think this is the last year before it locks. So if they get something, out of the blue this offseason or this summer that can help them, like an Everett Golson or Braxton Miller or something, then all right, maybe I could see, them contending, but that's about it for that program. I think they enjoyed such a good run with some really talented prospects coming out of that state for about 4 straight years. And while there are really good prospects in that state still, they're not getting those, generational type players that can define programs like they used to.
Very finally, in the SEC West, everyone can't succeed. I mean, everyone went to a bowl game last year, but someone has to be at the bottom. Who would your best guess be for the bottom feeder in the all-powerful SEC West?
I mean, I'll take the easy answer. I think Mississippi State's probably going to be the team a lot of people pick. And, I think that there's a chance that Mississippi State can finish, or anybody can finish last, but not be significantly worse than they were last year. I think all of those teams are so tight in terms of talent, coaching, and ability that, one or two things can really, send you into a tailspin. And for Mississippi State, last year, they had 18 of 22 players in their defensive 2 deep were returning. I mean, they were just loaded, not just as their starters, but backups. They had a great offensive line. Obviously, Dak was there, and Josh Robinson and all those guys. Having Dak back is great, but, losing 5 of 7 starters on your front 7, that hurts. Losing 3 starters on the offensive line, that hurts. Those were 2 really big reasons why Mississippi State was successful. And that was their edge. That was the reason they were successful. And, in the SEC West, when the margin of error is so tight and everyone's sort of compacted with really good players and coaches, that may be all, they need to go back down to the cellar.
Barrett's Lee, Bleacher Report, never disappoints. Thank you very much, Barrett.
All right, thanks, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.